When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. I almost forgot your name, I guess.
I forget my name all the time. Don't worry about it.
That's cool. No problem. It's a long day, long days at training camp and all that stuff, man. And we got to have some fun on Sunday on our day off. Man.
Yeah,
we got to see a cool Angels game. They were down 6-0, and I've never seen a grand slam in person, but they put up 3 in one inning, and then they had that grand slam, and they scored 8 unanswered runs. Like, that was pretty fun. Like, that's a cool venue and stuff, but that has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about today. But I just bring it up, man. How's things with you?
We're actually friends. We don't just do the show. That's the idea here, is that you're watching two people that are actually friends, which is actually really cool. No, man, I'm doing great. Today was an eventful day. You could feel the energy a lot today. So, like, I mentioned the other day that I'm an empathic person. I feel a little drained just because of all the energy that was witnessed out there today. But that is the best possible scenario, I would say, coming out of the first padded practice.
Yeah, we got to see some hits today.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, some hit sticks. Like, it was noticeable. Like, the pads clacking together and all that stuff, and all that good stuff, the grunts and all. It was just a good time. And of course, it wasn't like a full-on like assault in the pads. It's just the first day, but obviously that's a big deal. And of course, I think with Saints training camp today, the best it's the topic of the day, right? It's every particular outlet that's covering the Saints or has a show about the Saints. They're talking about Chase Young.
Yep.
And we got to see 3 reps from him in team drills, which you hadn't been in team drills, but we got to see 3 reps from him. But man, when I tell you that first rep against Landon Young was just something insane. Like, that set the tone for Chase in New Orleans. And so I think that's an exciting thing. But just talk about Chase Young. Let's start there, because I think that's where we need to start.
Yeah, I want to highlight and emphasize what you're saying too about like 3 reps, and he's everyone's lead. He's everyone's main story. Like, pretty incredible. And I think part of that is the excitement that already exists with him being, I think it's fair to say, the Saints' highest profile addition this offseason.
Yeah, that's fair.
Player addition. And then coming in and being able to kind of see him immediately show value, right?
Yeah.
And I think the things that I would highlight about him are, when we've talked about his size over and over again, like, this dude is humongous. But he has been working diligently with Cam and taking notes from him and things like that. I posted a video on my Twitter account with a video of him of Cam effectively giving him, like, coaching him up, giving him some tips and stuff like that. And then Chase took that and then immediately made it work out on the field in that rep against Landon Young that you're talking about. So you're seeing somebody that comes in already talented, right? The ceiling's already very high, 2nd overall selection in the NFL draft the year that he was selected. Somebody that's coachable and that's willing to learn, right? Somebody that's a bit of a sponge in that way. And then you see the value of what he can do out on the field immediately translate. I think that all 3 of those things are things that are going to make the Saints really excited for what they could potentially get with Chase Young. And if Chase can stay healthy and just do those things, right? Like, just do those things, it's going to lead to a lot of productivity in this year with the New Orleans Saints. The biggest thing for him is just going to be staying on the field if he keeps playing the way that we saw today.
Yeah, I know. It's something to appreciate about him. And the cool thing is, like, you talk about training camp and Dennis Allen saying, like, at first it was, we got to teach him the Saints way, in a way, kind of like that. And then today it's like, all right, man, let me pull the reins back just a bit, because you got a little bit too close to Jake Haener than I really wanted you to. And it wasn't just that rep. I mean, he had another one against
Jesse Davis.
Jesse Davis, who just got here right?
guy,
I
man.
mean, and poor guy, he just draws that assignment and he just gets again obliterated by Chase Young. But again, we've talked about this pass rush. We've talked about the potential for it, and we even go back to past episodes. Somebody asked us about the NASCAR package the other day, and it's with Granderson. How much success Chase Young could have in this defense, and just look, he's young. He's super young. He's only playing on a 1-year deal. We had talked about it and reported during minicamp that he was going to be ready to go, but he got the clearance on August 22nd, the full clearance, and the fact that he's out here and learning and just doing the things that he needs to do. And we talked about how his physical stature, again, I said Tonka truck the other day. Maybe it's like super shredder. That might be another one.
There you go.
Myself even more. Like
super shredder is really good.
Nuts. Like just the way his build is. And so look, I just hope it translates into stay available, because we saw another player go down today, which we'll get into that shortly. But I just hope it translates it on the field. And I know people have talked about, and I guess that's the question I have for you is, what follows Chase Young, right? The Washington stuff or San Francisco, people have talked about him taking plays off or doing all those things. I don't see that player right now at all. Like, I don't see anybody that's lacking effort, but as we get closer to the season or anything, is that something that you maybe say, okay, I have that type of reservation about him, or are you worried about that even?
I think you're watching for it to see if you need that type of reservation. I think that's where it is. Like, does it change having a guy like Cam Jordan pushing you? Does it change having a guy like Carl Granderson, who you have to respect from getting it from the mud as an undrafted free agent to the team's top edge rusher, edge defender? You know what I mean? You can't take plays off around these guys. And if you do, it sounds like you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what Alvin Kamara was talking about with accountability and not letting things fly. Is this a version of that, right? To where you can kind of curb that type of behavior by making sure that you're addressing it when you see it. And it feels like Cam will do that. It feels like, to an extent, Carl Granderson probably would do that.
Yeah.
And certainly it sounds like the Saints coaching staff, particularly over on the defensive side, has always been about accountability anyway. It sounds like that's going to be a staff that is going to kind of try to curb that and keep that at bay as well. So I won't say that I have my reservations about it just yet, but it's something that, like, you're keenly watching for just in case you see it. But the thing about it too, in this situation, which is different than his scenario in Washington, is that if he takes plays off, you can take him off the field and still have two starting defensive ends and everything. So you can nip that right in the bud immediately.
Right.
Like we used to see them do with fumbles over on the offensive side. And so I think you could see that kind of consequence being available, maybe keeping that at bay as well. Yeah,
and it's fascinating because I think when you look at Chase Young and what he brings to the table, I don't think we're looking at a 90% snap guy. Staff, not that. I don't think we're looking at that. I'm interested to see where the rotation is. I think he might have more than Cam, but we're starting to see Peyton Turner come alive a little bit more, Isaiah Foskey come alive a little bit more, and so right now we assume those five are in the mix. But as of right now, I don't see Chase Young starting at this point because everything in walkthroughs that we've seen, it's Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson. Now that might change, but at the same time, you're looking at where Chase Young is at. I don't think he's in there's pressure on him, but I don't think it's a pressure where, like, you're our number one guy and we're paying you to go get after the quarterback all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have help here, legitimate help, right? I think Granderson is obviously the top dog when it comes to rush the passer right now, but Cam Jordan, when he's healthy, he could obviously help. And if you can get the leap from Turner and Foskey, then not saying the pressure doesn't fall on somebody like Chase Young, but they brought him in to make sure he does get after the quarterback. But I think the pressure's not solely on him to get the job done right.
Yeah. And I think the incentives tell you that too, right? The incentives are not production based. They're simply, they're game based, right? Being on the game day roster, active roster for each game is where he's picking up his bonuses. These aren't incentives that are based upon number of sacks, number of, play or tied to team success or anything like that. All of his incentives are about being on the field. And so it sounds like that's the expectation from the team, is be on the field and contribute. But I think you're right. It doesn't feel like they're trying to put a lot of pressure on him to have to be the guy to get the pass rush done. Now, is he an added value to your pass rush that you're trying to give a shot in the arm? Yes. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. But I think any player would rather that pressure than the pressure of being the pass rush for a team. And that's very, very different as well. The other thing that I'll mention too is that, his ability to play both inside and out is eventually going to be displayed here.
Right.
And that is going to be very appealing too, especially on those, you mentioned those NASCAR packages. It's easier to be able to do that when you have guys like Cam, like like Cam Jordan, Chase Young, and Carl Granderson, who can all effectively play inside and out. So it gives you a lot of variety there. I think that there is a world in which Chase Young starts a game or some games, just strictly based on the game plan, right? Is this a weak offensive line that you want to take advantage of right away? Is this an offensive line that struggles against speed? Whatever it might be, right? So I think that that would be a thing to where maybe he doesn't start for the first couple of weeks, but I could definitely see games wherein he gets the first snap if the matchup is right. And this is the other thing that's really nice about this addition, that the Saints can now play the matchup over on the defensive line. Yeah,
for sure. And I think for him, it's it remains to be seen, obviously, but you mentioned that. I mean, it's good coaching, right? Good coaching and good game planning would put him in that position to succeed. And so I look forward to seeing it. I look forward to seeing more, but with this padded practice, just 3 tiny reps gave us everything we hope for. Like,
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that.
I haven't. And again, the recaps on Saints News Network, but again, just to paint the picture, he's on a bull rush. And the thing I appreciate about him is too, they're lining him up on both sides.
Yes.
Like, it's not just a right end, but he's a left end too. They're putting him at different spots here on the line. So I think there's some creativity to be had there. But I mean, that bull rush, just getting Landon Young, and Landon Young isn't just a guy that you just beat, right? Like,
right.
I mean,
no,
he just
solid
went in there, bull rushed him, and just, like I said, just absolutely obliterated him. And so there's something to appreciate about that. And so I look forward to more Chase Young as we get into it. And hopefully he can stay healthy, but the neck's not an issue, right? That's the good news.
Yeah, and that's the really good thing.
That's the good for long-term health and outlook and stuff. I think the next thing I want to tackle, because Albert Breer was here over the weekend. He was here Saturday, and he put out a takeaways piece. And one of the things he said that I keep seeing, that obviously I called attention to too in the article,
nice.
Was the fact that he said the Saints have an offer on the table for Alvin Kamara. So that is what Breer was reporting. And obviously Breer was kind of working around, the Saints and talking to DA and stuff like that. And so pretty interesting, right? That there would be an offer. And I think this kind of echoes what we've been told, right? Like that, maybe the Saints have a number in mind for him, and then he has a number, him and his agent have a number, and they got to try to meet somewhere in the middle. But, before this came out, it was crickets. And Alvin said that too, that it was crickets. So maybe something changed between him talking and not. But I just think it's interesting to bring up that, Breer would report that there's an offer on the table for the Saints.
Yes. And this is also kind of what we alluded to in the idea that, like, proximity in these conversations is important, right? He shows up to camp, no restrictions, participates in everything. That's a show of good faith. He looks good. That's a show of, okay, you do want to keep me around at the bargaining chip for Alvin. And then the other side of it is they're literally just in the same place at the same time. Everything. And so it's easier to have these conversations. It's easier to get in touch with the agent when, the client is there with the team and everything like that. Like, all of those things, those pieces just move faster when the proximity makes sense. And so that was one of the reasons why we kept saying, like, look, don't be surprised if this isn't done by the second, third week of training camp, or until the second or third week of training camp, because they're not around one another right now. They weren't talking to each other. Kamara talked about being in Africa and all this stuff. Like, they wasn't worried about this. And so I think that, like, just being around and now seeing kind of how this all goes. He was also off to the side. He was talking with Gayle Benson, the Saints owner, all that stuff over on the side. Now, I promise you, they weren't negotiating contract details or anything like that. But it just shows that, like, there's clearly no ill will between the player and the organization as these conversations continue. And even he went so far as to say, this isn't a dispute. I just want another contract and everything like that. And so he's like, it's not an argument. It's not a dispute. There's no bad blood or anything like that. And so I thought that was just a little display of that with Gayle Benson in attendance today.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I hate to be a broken record, but go back to past episodes. We've talked plenty about Kamara, our thoughts on what he should be paid, kind of just a little bit more about what this stems from. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't about this year. It's about next year. It's about a commitment. And look, we said it too, that he has a little bit of a bargaining chip because Kendre Miller's still not back out there. And, he was one that was kind of out there just observing, but he's been observing, right? And then good news for at least some of us. Brian Brzee was out there just as an observer, so that's good that, it's nothing serious, it seems like, for his foot. But, injuries have played a part in this training camp. Another one today. Yeah. Nick Saldiveri left practice for the calf injury. Like, he was able to limp or walk gingerly, however you want to describe it, off the field, but it's not a good one. You know what I mean? He's starting left guard right now, presumably, but another day, another injury. We just asked for getting through a day where we don't have that. And of course, the pads are on. Things can happen. You misstep, or somebody steps on you, or something plants wrong. Like, this is not uncommon, but now we have to worry about that. Saints made some transactions over the weekend. They got rid of Mark Evans. They waived him. And then, Justin Herron, who we hadn't seen for a while, he got waived and put on injury reserve, and they brought in a couple of new guys. So the thing about Saldiveri, we'll see. But at the same time, we've talked about Lucas Patrick. We talked about him the other day. Where is this team at right now when it comes to the offensive line? Because this is a lot of parts and pieces that have moved. Yeah, it feels like Taliesin Fuang is pretty solidified right now, at least at left tackle, thus far through camp. That can always change. Trevor Penning seems to consistently be number one in the rotation when it comes to right tackle, though they do continuously rotate some Landon Young first team reps in there with him. And I think when we see Nick Saldiveri go out and then Lucas Patrick go in, the thing that's really interesting to me is the amount of energy that Lucas Patrick brings. It's not that Saldiveri doesn't bring energy, but Lucas Patrick is like one of the loudest players on the field after a big run play. You alluded to his Ric Flair woo on Saturday's practice and stuff like that. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know that I remember an offensive lineman that brought that kind of energy on this team for a while, outside of maybe Teron, right? Like Teron, and then you could go back to Turley. It's been a minute. Like, I mean, I know some people have been hyped, but like, it's just a different type. But it's been a minute. Like Teron, I guess Teron for sure. And stuff. And so, and I think like McCoy, always celebrates big stuff and everything like that. But there's just something about like Lucas Patrick doing that in a training camp practice that is, I think, a good sign. You want this team to bring energy and everything, especially first day of pads. Like this is the bread and butter for a lot of these guys, everything. And so I do give Lucas Patrick a lot of credit for that. Like not only being comfortable in the system, not only being comfortable in the offense at the position, but there is something about the general demeanor with which he plays and how that might benefit this offensive line as well. Like they want attitude, they want energy, they want, people to play angry and all these other things to an extent. But seeing all of that, I think has some value for Lucas Patrick. And so I think it's going to be challenging for Saldiveri if he misses too much time here. He's had a calf injury before. I think he came into the NFL with one, if I remember correctly. And so, he should get back out on the field as quickly as he can. And I know he's going to be motivated to do so because he's competing with somebody that has a lot of experience at the spot that he's fighting for. Yeah. He's competing with somebody that brings something unique to the offensive line with that energy and everything. So I think that's a big thing to watch here over the course of the next couple of days. You're going to stay in pads for 2 more days, take the day off, and then come back for 2 more days of pads. So they're really going at this for this offensive line. Yeah, I think for him, he kind of reminds me, I use this loosely, but like the tier of like a Nick Easton to Larry Warford. Yeah. Like in that tier, I guess I would say for him, and that he has that potential. And again, he's played in a system like this, which he has that advantage. Him, Shane Lemieux, Oli Udoh, some of those guys, veterans. And, we hadn't seen Udoh, although, DA said that he could get snaps at left guard there. But it's been Lucas Patrick, and I think there's something to him. And he backs up Eric McCoy, which we don't ever, hope. But Eric McCoy is out. But at the same time, that matters in the grand scheme of things. It's your versatility. But he's getting left guard, right guard, and he obviously doubles as a center too. So that value and that versatility definitely has a leg up. But like we said the other day, if you're doing the offensive line, you got the starting 5, he's 6, Landon Young 7, and then you have to figure out if you can keep 8 or 9. And so good, not good for injury. We'll see how that kind of plays out. To get some more information on it hopefully soon. But calf injury, he was able to walk off or limp off under his own power. But we're going to have to keep tabs on that. You brought up Trevor Penning. Pads, there's so much been made about him. He talked today just talking about his comfortability, and that was one of the things I looked at on the offensive drills. They were doing a couple of different ones. They did some really fascinating stuff on that offensive side. I know we swapped up and stuff, but like they were not to jump off of the offensive line, but you talked about Derek Foster.
Mhm.
They were doing this drill where they had like put out a helmet on a stick.
Yeah.
And the running backs, like, it was right there, like simulating a defender like going low on a tackle, and they would push the defender's helmet down. Like it was a stiff arm or just moving it down. Like I've never seen that drill. Like I know Joel Thomas is smart as they come and stuff, but I've never seen that drill. That seems like a smart one to do. But just honing in on Trevor Penning, they were working on like the tackle tight end, tackle tight end like formation together, like being in sync. And then, they're working on some one-on-ones, but I gotta say, Trevor looks comfortable, right? And they had some run success today. That's a good thing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's arrived by any means because this is the team. I want to see it in a game. I want to see it against the 49ers. Everybody wants to see it, but I think for him, it's building his confidence. And that's the big thing, is for a guy who has been through the ringer, hasn't had a good start to his career, getting him to this point is a win.
Yeah, big time. I think the idea of like stripping everything down and putting him in a place that is completely new to him could have been exactly the right thing to do. It could have been, and we'll see exactly how things go. But I agree. I don't see any moments where he's lost or anything like that. He's got reps that he wins, reps that he loses, exactly what you would expect in training camp and everything. Like it would be a bigger issue if he was winning every rep and losing every rep, or losing every rep. And so I think I'd rather see a little bit of the 50-50, which is what I feel like we're getting now from him. And look, I think that a lot of this too is like the Saints like have had no issues running to his side at all. And not that they haven't had any issues and that every run has been big, but like they've never, like a lot of the runs are going over to his side of the offense when he's in. And
outside runs. What?
I know.
Just talking crazy, Ross.
I know. And so this is the other thing, is like he just didn't get to move like that in the previous offenses. Yeah. And so now him getting the opportunity to really be able to do the thing that made him draftable, not draftable, but like a round one talent. Everybody knew he was going to be a project, but everyone agreed that he was worth a round one investment. Now you're actually playing to his strengths. You're doing the things that you know that he can do. He moves well. He's a mauler in the run game, all these other things. So now you're seeing a lot more of that. So I think that's building his confidence. I think that the fact that he's not being like chastised and everything is certainly building his confidence quite a bit too. And everyone around him just seems to have rallied around what he's doing and the way that he's progressing, the way that he works. So I loved hearing him talk about how he's feeling comfortable out there. It helps when you have your center and the guy next to you is solidified in Cesar Ruiz and all that. Like him being over at left tackle while also trying to switch out of left guard probably wouldn't have been ideal, or at least it would have been a little bit slower. But now he's got a guy that made some big leaps himself in Cesar Ruiz, and so I think that all that kind of goes towards making him a lot more comfortable and hopefully more productive in this offense.
It felt like they were doing like square peg round hole. Before, and the fact is, like last year was so weird because he makes the starts. And then all of a sudden, he can't even get into jumbo sets. Like, I don't know if it was doghouse with the coaches or something like that, but that was bizarre. Yeah, like, this guy wasn't even good enough to get jumbo looks.
Right. And then at the same time, they were talking about like, oh, yeah, no, he just needs to get more experience. He needs to get more reps.
Yeah, but how are you going to get more experience if you're not going to start?
Get him out on the field.
Put him somewhere. It was bizarre, but it's been, again, he hasn't arrived, but he is taking steps. And I think that's the most important thing for guys like him, Talese Fuanga. And if you want to ask about Nick Saldiveri, they're taking steps. And you're not sitting here saying, well, he just got beat on every rep and we're talking about it. Now I want to see it against different competition. Like, that's a guy I want to see Chase Young go up against, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like that would be, I can't wait to see that and see how he handles Carl Granderson more. Because like when you looked at camp last year, Carl Granderson kind of ate his lunch a little bit. So we know that potential is there. But, again, he said that he was training some with Teron Armstead this offseason. We already talked about the Duke Manyweather schools before, but he's doing everything he can to be at least ready to go. And I think that's the big thing and big takeaway. And so we'll see more of him throughout camp. But they had some success running the ball. But I think for the offense, though, we got to talk about Mason Tipton again. He made another 2 really good plays today, including a touchdown and one-on-ones. And so we've talked about him a lot, you know what I mean, on this show, even before everything happened. And so he made a play again. Kind of walk us through what happened and what you saw from him today.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of nice plays from him. The first time that he had a big reception was down on the left sideline. He was working and ended up uncovering. But I don't know how much Peyton Turner's sack had to do with that. That was a rep. I believe it was Peyton Turner. There was one sack by Peyton Turner. There was another one by, I believe, Monty Rice. The Monty Rice one was the one that forced Rattler to run, actually. So this would have been a Haener throw. So yeah, it was the Peyton Turner one. So this is how you just kind of like work things through until it all makes sense. So there was the pressure by what would have been a sack by Peyton Turner, the same rep where Chase Young went at Landon Young and walked him back and everything. And so that one, like, I kind of hedged a little bit just based on the fact that it was like, maybe the DBs kind of stopped playing because they weren't sure he was going to throw it, all these other things. But then the very next play, he catches this big 29-yard pass that he's got to lay out for on the left sideline and then make this catch at the 11. They were taking the snap from the 40. He was in pretty tight. Wright. Yeah, Rajon Wright. Yeah, and he was in pretty tight coverage for that. And so being able to go up there and still make that catch on that left sideline was pretty nice. And so I think the thing that stands out about him so much is that he doesn't feel like, and this is what happens oftentimes with the camp studs that don't pan out, is that they become kind of one-dimensional, one-trick ponies, right? Some of them are contested catch guys. Some of them are speed guys, all these other things. We've seen Mason Tipton now have the speed to take things over the top. We've seen him fight for passes in the middle of the field. He's always been contributing on special teams. Like during OTAs, mandatory minicamps, all that stuff, that's what he did the most of. In fact, there were times where we weren't sure he was going to make it because there were some drops and things like that. And so when they moved on from Kyle Sheets, it was like, oh, okay, well, watch out. Because
it's kind of like a warning sign there.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a little bit of a reality check for him too, of like, okay, well, I don't want that to happen to me before I really have a chance to prove myself. We got here out to California, and he's certainly proven himself.
Yeah, for sure. And he said today, like, he can run the whole route tree. He feels good, and he knows he wasn't surprised that he had it in him, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's a good confidence to have. And again, Keith Williams as a wide receiver coach can get him up. We talked about the other day about, do they have enough playmakers, or do they need a Tipton in there to kind of jazz it up a little bit? And so the other thing to appreciate is Haener was throwing the ball too. Oh, yeah. And then before it was Rattler, and then today it was Haener. And so that's good. And look, we even pointed out early in minicamp that, or OTAs and minicamp, that he was getting first team reps with Derek Carr too. So it's like, this is a guy they want to get a little bit more look at and such and see how he does. And of course, practice is one thing. Can you replicate it in a game situation? We've yet to see like a tempo on the offense, like where they're up against the clock or anything like that. Good call. That's a thing that we want to see a little bit more of. That's the type of football that I can't wait to see. Right. But, other than that, we saw Tipton ball out again, and he's just stacking days, and he's kind of like a Jordan Mims that just continues to do stuff that gets people on the, gets them on the radar. And so I think that's what we're looking at. One-on-ones were pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great to see those. First padded practice is the perfect time to start these up. So
yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just one-sided. So I put numbers. I did the math, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I know the receivers were like about 65% win rate. I think I want to say 63, 65. And then the defense was 33, 35.
That's pretty 35. Good for the defense.
Yes, 35% win rate. Now, of course, some of that is skewed because some people drop the ball. So we're just talking about the success against a person. I'm not saying that, it doesn't matter how it ended up, that whether they won the rep or not, like, was dictated by a catch. But, some good things. Chris Olave doing his thing against Paulson and Debo. I think that's obviously one of the first ones to call out. A tough day for Bub Means. He didn't catch any of his 3 attempts. They had some good moves defensively. I thought Jordan Howden had a solid rep.
Oh, my goodness.
In coverage.
One against AT.
Just his one rep. And A.T. Perry getting 2 of 4. Tipton catching both of his, including that touchdown. What was some of your takeaways, I guess, from the one-on-ones? Because it wasn't perfect. It was a little sloppy, I guess, in some aspects, but, about what we might have expected.
Yeah, I liked seeing Kool-Aid McKinstry come in and win 2 of his 3 reps.
Yeah.
In one-on-ones. And, you highlighted when they were running those one-on-one drills without the ball, him stonewalling, I believe it was AT a few days ago, and everything. And so he has been able to translate that to ball skills as well. We didn't see any interceptions, but we did see a couple of PBUs. We got one from Rajon Wright up against A.T. Perry. We got one from Shamar Jean Charles up against Bub Means. Bub Means also had a drop today too. And so there were a couple of these ones too. Like I have one of these as a win that they didn't get like. So Rashid Shaheed going up against Kool-Aid McKinstry, he actually won on the route, but Derek Carr's pass kind of pulled back a little bit, kind of held up a little bit. And then so, he after the play, you could hear DC yelling down the field, my bad. That was on me. That was my fault. Fault. Bad ball. And he was telling him like great route, like all this stuff. So again, like there's some of that exchange and some of that stuff that goes on where sometimes you have a win on the rep by the wideout, but the quarterback doesn't get the ball there, or the ball's overthrown or something like that, or it's a drop like we saw with Bub Means. And so there's a lot of these different versions of this that go on. But yeah, I think one of my favorite coverage reps was a coverage rep by Anthony Johnson going up against Stanley Morgan Jr.
Anthony Johnson.
Not Anthony Johnson. Sorry.
You went back to last year.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
You're thinking about Rico Payton?
Yeah. Rico Payton. Oh my goodness. Anthony Johnson from last year's roster. Oh man. Yeesh. My apologies.
No,
yes, Rico Payton up against Stanley Morgan Jr. Just really physical there, and that's kind of Rico's game, right? Like that's kind of what it is that he does. So it was great to see that on display there. Somebody was asking about Cedric Wilson. I have Cedric Wilson as one of two. And then they also asked about Alontae Taylor. I have Alontae Taylor winning one of his 3 reps.
I think they were probably referring to the little scuffle.
Oh, right. That also
might be,
happened.
that could be a thing. I guess we could chat about that a little bit. It was just a scuffle. Like, I mean, it was one of those, it was Jamal Williams run up the middle. And, the thing is when they keep running, like, it doesn't matter how far you get down the field. The runners keep running into the end zone, and the defense, their job is to keep hitting,
keep blocking, and
knock the ball loose. So it was one of those that like allowed to play out. He found a little bit of hole in the middle, and then it was Cedric Wilson Jr. Was on him with the block, and the way Dennis Allen described it is that he thought maybe Alontae took a little bit more exception to the blocking and stuff. But you get a little bit of pushing back and forth. It wasn't like this big old fisticuffs Jim Ross slobber knocker thing. You know what I'm saying? So it was
that's
Alontae
like Taylor's music.
Yeah, that was the thing. But I told you that going into this, guys, like this is probably the day we see something happen, and it didn't come from the offensive line. It came from maybe a spot I wasn't really expecting, but it's just a part of these are competitive guys. You mentioned competitiveness on every aspect, and so again, good to see one-on-ones, good to see that in team, but that's really what happened. Did you have another vantage point or anything else that you had to add on that one?
No, not necessarily. The thing that I took away from it, though, was that like Cedric Wilson was blocking hard. And like this is what these wide receivers are going to be asked to do. And a little while ago, you and I talked about how Cedric Wilson could potentially fill the Juwan Jennings type role from San Francisco's offense for Clint Kubiak. Yeah. And there's an example of that. Like him going out there and blocking like that first day of pads and everything. I thought that spoke highly of Cedric Wilson. You cut it off once the scuffle begins and everything like that. But I think that the blocking and the effort and everything like that does mean something.
Yeah, it's not like they got kicked out of practice. So like this wasn't like the fight, like full-blown fight with punches thrown that we saw at minicamp, like with Lucas Patrick and Trajan Jeffcoat. It was not like that.
Yeah, other players got involved very quickly and like peeled them away and everything like that, and just started walking away with they just grabbed somebody and then like walked away with it. So it was a lot of like, people kind of having each other's back and like, hey, we don't need this.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply. When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just even go back to the one-on-ones, Kevin Austin Jr., we don't talk about him a lot. Like I know we said that uphill battle. Wide receiver room's crowded and stuff, but give him a little bit of shout out. Jake Hayner pass he got for a touchdown too in one-on-ones. I think that was a good one. But if you want to see the full details, all that fun stuff, look at the details. It's on Saints News Network or Saints on Sports Illustrated. SI.com/NFL/Saints. Shameless plug. All the recaps and all that fun stuff is there. Looking at special teams, I guess we'll go there next before we talk about team. Lou Hedley Day?
Before we do that.
Just kidding.
Before we do that, just Marquito was asking about Dallin Holker and everything and how has he been in blocking. So while we were on the offense, I wanted to just jump to this real quick.
Yeah.
We saw him today get a little bit of extra coaching, right? He ended up
running
the route. Clint Kubiak very vocally challenging him to, let me see if I know I wrote the quote down. Holker, you have to get the effing route. And so like you really feel the charge from these coaches and from those on the sidelines of like what the expectations are.
Yeah.
And so I really liked seeing that. I like see it because you don't get that impression from Clint Kubiak when he's on the podium and stuff like that, but he is a totally different dude when he's on the field in coaching. So I love seeing that. He also got some extra coaching on blocking, Clancy Brown off to the side as well. So to answer the question about how he's been doing, he's still taking all those first team reps.
Yeah.
He's still in there a lot, but I do think that he still has a ways to go. But he's getting the coaching that he needs to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fair. I mean, come in here and just be polished from day one, right? You've got to learn. And of course, that's the difference. Like a Clint Kubiak, yes, he is soft-spoken. And Dennis Allen even alluded to that. I think it was the owners meeting that this is a soft-spoken guy, but like he's anything but that on the field. Like he is like, I think we talked about this one day, like the coaches that we didn't want to actually have to, get chewed out by or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'd want to be on that side. I think number one was what? Riz was the number one. Hodges would have been the other one.
Yeah, for sure.
But Kubiak could be another one. I was just like, I don't want to get on his bad side and have that. But that's good to see that type of accountability, like we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
It's just like you could have just let it go. You could be like, oh, no big deal. But no, this is the type of stuff that's going to make the team better. And hopefully turning the tide on this season's, misfortune that they've had for sure.
And there's going to be a lot of expectations around that tight end room. I mean, I know they don't have Juwan Johnson right now, but once he's
was jogging today, so that's a good sign.
Really good sign there. And so once they get him back, I think like that bolsters even a bit more. But right now, while you have the opportunity to work a lot with a guy like Holker, you take every opportunity that you can. To continue to do that. So I think we're seeing that quite a bit. Yeah,
for sure. No, that's good call. So I definitely didn't want to overlook that. But I was just going to say special teams because obviously it's a focus. And somebody said something about what's special teams. And I'm like, we talk about special teams and we write about special teams
all the time.
Lou Hedley Day, and it was a Blake Groupie kicking day. But Groupie's no longer perfect. He missed his last two. They were from 56 on both of them. And then you had pointed out that Matt Hayball was a holder. So like I was vantage point to see like it was just one was short to the right and then the other one was wide right.
Yeah.
So the second one was a better kick, except it was just wide at the end. And the first one just didn't make it. But, no longer perfect in camp. Like he's 21-23 now. Charlie Smith was 10 of 11. But, first of all, that dynamic between the holder and the kicker is one thing to point out, but are we worried or concerned that he couldn't hit a 56-yarder? I mean, he has the leg for it, and there was a little bit of a wind going, but is that a big deal?
Yeah, I think if we continue to see it, then there would be a concern there, but it's just something on the radar now because I believe he hit like a 54-yarder earlier in camp as well and everything. So, okay, we're talking two more yards here that he missed with an unfamiliar holder, because Hedley held his first three kicks, which was during the first field goal period. They did two separate field goal periods around a team period. So from 30, 39, and 42, he was good on those. And then Hayball held from 33, 46, 47, and then 56. After he missed that one from 56, they ran it back and did it again, and then he missed it again. And so I think that this is kind of part of it. But I'll say this. If he continues to miss from 50-plus and Charlie Smith continues to hit from 50-plus, that's where I think the conversation and the narrative ends up, I don't want to say changing,
Yeah.
but that's where I think it gets more interesting is at that point. I think that's going to be the big thing.
Well, and I think hopefully the long-term vision is your offense is better and you don't have to worry about settling for 50-yard field goals all the time. Like, I mean, I get that it's a possibility, that's a thing, but hopefully the offense could be more in that 30 to 40-yard range if they have to do it. But it's a lot of moving parts and pieces.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's just a thing. It's an observation. I wouldn't say that Groupie's job's in jeopardy or anything like that right now. No. Slow your roll. But a punting day from Lou Headley, I thought he had a pretty solid day.
I thought so too.
Maybe only one that was not ideal, but getting consistent hang times over 4 seconds, and it was just pretty balls. And anytime you get compliments from Rizzy, that's a good sign. Amazing. But a good punting day from him for sure. I think that for him it was probably one of his best, right? And the way he was able to positioning for sure. So that's I mean, shoot, I got times on here: 4.70, 4.84, 4.56, 4.59, 4.66, 4.60, 4.69, 4.58. Like, I mean, these are good punts. And not only that in the special teams, but they were working on this return drill where, like, you have two of them going in the middle, two blockers, and then turning back upfield. But anything else that stood out for you on special teams?
I think the big thing that I would say, just so that we get the word in, is when it comes to Headley, no shanks. I don't think there's anything that he had today that I would have called a shank. He had one that I agree maybe came up, it was a little bit shorter than you would have liked. But even that one still hung in the air for over 4 seconds. Right. It just came up really short. And so I think that that's a good testament to him. I think that the other thing too is that he put a few of them and good placement near the end zone on these. One of which could have been fielded, but I think it was Stanley Morgan Jr. was in position to get it, but just wasn't able to wrangle it. And then there were two others that went over to the right corner that hit and bounced back and then ended up getting fielded within the 10. And so I would point that out too, just as a part of the location and his ability to maybe do something we didn't see from him a lot last year, which was locate the football in such a way that you can start to down some of these within the 10, within the 5. That was a piece of the puzzle that I felt like has been missing since the Morstead days. Yeah. Because Groupie wasn't able to do that Gillikin wasn't able to do that very successfully. And we didn't see Headley get a lot of opportunity to do that last year because of the rugby style punting or whatever. But in adding the NFL's more traditional style of punting to his repertoire, we're seeing a little bit more of that ball location and then down to the goal line.
Yeah, and we talked about this dynamic that Charlie Smith and Matt Hayball have the stronger legs, but you're starting to see Headley be a lot more comfortable here and putting together, and again, stacking days. And so I don't know that we definitely don't at the point where we can say there's like a legitimate kicker competition. Right. The punting competition, it's close, right? But Hayball, like, he can sky kick, he can boot it. He has the Headley skill set, but a little bit more distance and all that. And at some point, aesthetically. And at some point, it's like, which do you go with? Do you say, okay, maybe I want the 60-yard punt one day, you know what I mean? Or do I just want to consistently say 40 to 50, no return? Right. That's a thing. But, special teams wise, I look forward to seeing more of, like, I'm waiting. I know they've been like building blocks on the return, but I want to see like a full-fledged return team and a full-fledged return kickoff teams here soon. But, same. Going into team, I think it wasn't as much. It was only 2 team series today, and it wasn't a lot of throws. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't crazy. And to paint the picture, one, they're starting at like the 42. And the other drive, they're starting at like at 40. And so it's not like, and again, they're not doing like time situations or, game situation type stuff, but, run game getting a little bit out there. See Taysom taking some tosses, which is pretty cool to see. Foster Moreau getting involved a little bit early on that first series. The play action to Alvin Kamara, hitting him like short left, I think you see a few of them. Got some waggle action too.
Got some waggles.
A little nice hookups to Rashid. I think that was
play action waggle.
Play action waggle.
I love them. I love them.
But overall, Hainer got the nod above Rattler today, and so I think for some of these, I don't want to say that nothing really stood out, which is not true, but it wasn't as much as it has been the past couple of days, but I expect that to ramp up even more.
Yeah, for sure. The one of the reps that I enjoyed in the first team period was Hainer's first rep. He ended up targeting Mason Tipton, crossing the middle of the field, and hung it up maybe a little bit too much If he would have been able to lead him a little bit, it could have been a big play. But he hung it up a bit, and it was Will Harris that was able to close on it, sky up, and then knock the ball away and everything. Thought it was going to be a pick. I really thought it was going to be an interception, but they weren't able to come away with it. But big one there, just being able to see Will Harris go up there and make that play. That was immediately followed by another rehuddle.
Yeah.
Hainer, by the way, who I think has had the most rehuddles so far.
Yeah, it was Rattler, I think, had 2, and then Hainer had 2, and now he's got 3. Yeah. So and Carr's had them too. Right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, but it's not without it. But and I know he's frustrated because of that too, because they were trying to get it all in. But I think it's not that this offense is super, super complicated like it was, but there's still a lot to learn on it.
Yeah.
Too. A lot of ways to go.
For sure.
And then as far as other things go, look, I think that second team period, that's obviously when we saw Chase Young. That's when Nick Saldiveri went off the field and such. That's the other part of it. Peyton Turner making more noise, getting a little bit of a sack. That's cool. You saw Anthony Orji come up, Monty Rice doing his thing too. It was good. That's where we saw some of the hit sticks too.
Yeah.
Jermaine Jackson getting popped on that side over there by Mac McCain, and then there's a fumble and defense recovers. There's Isaiah Stallbird that was in on another play. Before that, they had, what was the other hit that happened? It was like, you just hear the pads crack.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. It was like one of the hit sticks. McCain had one. Let me find it, but there was, and I do want to call this one out too while we look for that it was the second team portion. Derek Carr was targeting Taysom Hill, and Alante had great coverage on Taysom. Like it was an out route, intermediate area, and Alante had some really solid coverage on that.
That one looked really nice.
Yep.
For him. I really enjoyed too the screen. I think you mentioned a little short pass to Alvin Kamara. There was a screen in second team drills where Equinemi St. Brown put a really, really nice block down to help kind of spring that one open a bit. I thought maybe Tipton would get called for a hold on Alante Taylor on that one because he had a handful of the jersey. Yeah. It was as Alante was trying to run upfield to catch up with Alvin Kamara, so that technically would have been away from the play. So that would be something I would just, as a coach, I would
a note,
a note on that for sure. But still really nice, and I think probably the best executed screen that we've seen so far during training camp.
Yeah,
unsurprising to see it with Alvin Kamara, of course.
Yeah, and I had another thing. I'm just going through stuff. Tallahassee Fawanga, you want to know how he does in pass protection. There was the play that one I was just talking about with Taylor where he was able to pick up Will Harris as a rusher. And I mean, he was just right there, perfect positioning. And so, again, those are the types of things that you want to see. We talked about Chase Young again. He's the one that made all of the waves and noise today in just those 3 little plays. But, it was you had a couple of runs today. You get a little bit more stuff in the second level today. But other than that, it was a pretty mellow day. I'd say mellow in terms of action, but still stuff going on.
Yeah. There was the big run by Jacob Caboti. Really good
another
cutback.
Play by him.
Yeah, definitely somebody to keep watching. He ended up in that zone run game. You effectively have 3 options. Doesn't necessarily be outside zone, but you effectively have 3 options. You can bounce outside, which is kind of the first option. You can bang up the middle if somebody takes the outside gap away, and you have the ability to turn upfield. If both of those options are taken away, then you have the ability to bend back, right, and to be able to cut back there. And so both of his lanes, in terms of banging up the middle or bouncing outside, were taken up. And so he cut back to take the bend option and then go to the backside of the play. And in the process of doing so, it was kind of him, and it was a one-on-one between him and Isaiah Foskey.
Mm-hmm.
And he put another juke. We've seen him do this a couple times now. Like, he's got some okey doke to him for sure. And he put a nice little move on him that opened up some space for him to be able to pick up some big yards. I think that was the biggest run of the day.
It was a whiff. Like, Foskey was coming downhill, and Caboti, like, by the time Foskey, picked up on it, Caboti was bouncing outside. Go on. Gone.
And he, before you knew it, he was in the 3rd level.
Yeah.
Stopped by. Here we go. This is how I take notes. Stopped by Rico Payton.
There you go.
By the time they got there, let me not jump back to 2024. 2023, I mean.
Yeah. No, it's okay. We can time travel sometimes. One a day. We do. The other hit, I found it. It was Roderick Teamer on James Robinson.
That's right.
That's what it was. Right. I definitely wanted to find, because credit the right people, but that was a thump and a half, I guess.
That was a big one.
Oh, man. So that's kind of where things have gone. If you got questions, of course, make sure y'all put that in there. Again, we try to pay attention to a lot of them. I saw one earlier that I probably should want to get from Jason, that one.
This one here,
yeah. Just asking about Mason Tipton, how he kind of stacks up to Marquez Callaway or Marquez. It's Quez. It's Quez. Marquez. That's a tough one because they're kind of different receivers.
Yeah, very different.
Like Callaway's more of a possession guy, you know what I mean? Like I know people always talk about like him being the next Colston and stuff like that. So Callaway made plays. I don't know if he made as many big plays as we've seen from Mason Tipton so far, but it's an interesting question. But I would say that they're kind of different receivers for sure.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'd answer that one for now. But
for
sure, made his mark. I mean, he made it his impact on his team, so he did what he was supposed to.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that worked in Marquez's favor too is that he was a solid blocker.
Yeah,
and I don't know if we're gonna find that about Tipton, but he's willing.
Yeah, he's willing.
And in some cases, that's all that it takes. You know what I mean? And so that'd be the one thing that I would highlight in terms of like how they're different. But they both contributed on special teams. They both contributed as returners. They're both making big plays downfield, but then also making some plays in the short and intermediate areas, or more so in the intermediate areas. I think it's a big thing I'd like to see from Tipton is just 3 levels. Yeah. 3-level threat, see all that kind of stuff. But he's shown a little bit of that for sure. And then, I don't know what value he brings to the run game and how that could potentially impact him. Yeah.
And then again, we've said this before too, even with some of these guys, it's like, even if you make the final roster, like for him to do it, you're not guaranteed that you're going to be even active on game day too.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. And I not to take away from him because he's coming here, and Wade DA talked about him as like he compared him to Chris Harris Jr., who played for the Saints last year, or was it last year? Yeah, it was. Yeah. No, it was that Andy Dalton. Yeah, I was thinking Arizona that game and stuff. But he played for the Saints, and but the time he was with the Broncos, he was an undrafted rookie. Nobody knew who Chris Harris Jr. was, and he just came in here and just started making plays, stacking days, all that fun stuff. And then now look at what, Chris Harris Jr. had a strong career, you know what I mean? And so I'm not saying that's the same way, but he's been like, we talked about the undrafted rookies that have stood out. He's one that we've noticed, right? It was one that has come in here, worked hard every day, and has made some plays. And it's not saying that other people haven't. Like, we've been really impressed with Jacob Kavodi. Low key, I think he's been one that's starting to rise up a little bit on the depth chart, and at least get some more eyeballs on him. Guys like Kyle Hergel on the offensive line. I mean, this is just a part where you're going to start seeing more of these guys emerge, I guess, if you will. But Tipton maybe has a decent outlook, but he's got to polish some of the other parts of his game too.
Yeah, for sure. He still has a lot to prove. He still has a way to go. He has been the receiver outside of Olave and Shaheed that has strung together the most consistent presence. Yeah. And so if he can keep that up, that goes his way. But I would still consider him a guy that's like a lock for the practice squad right now. Yeah. And then if he can continue to build the consistency, show more in his game, all these other things, then I think he can improve his outlook.
I said he's new Shaq Davis the other day, right?
Yes.
That's kind of what I said.
Yeah. Durite wanted to know about AK in the run game. I thought he's had some nice stuff. I think I think we might be back to the days of talking about the short passing game as in the screen game as a part of the run game for this team. Remember when that was the idea, was that the short passing game was an extension of the run game?
Yep.
And so if we accept that, then I think that like Alvin Kamara has shown some really nice stuff. If we don't accept that, then I think that like we see him comfortable in the system, just haven't really seen the big breakaway run yet.
Yeah, they were working on wheel routes today.
That's true.
Just saying.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it was good to see it. Like, can we see it in a game? That'd be good. Yeah. But the screen game, I mean, they are trying those short stuff and still attacking the middle of the field. They're seeing a whole bunch of those too. So it's not going away. And hopefully that's something that we see as the season progresses, not like week 12 and be like, hey, how come you haven't done this yet?
Right. Yes, absolutely. This is a guy that made a play today. How is Isaiah Stallbird doing?
Yeah, he was low key. He's one of my guys that I like to keep an eye on. So, I think he made one the other day, and today get a fumble recovery. But, he's interesting because the way they use him a little bit more, he's like a hybrid linebacker safety guy. And like I compared him kind of like Asua Cravens back in the day is kind of where I'd say. And so, again, he's somebody that learns the special teams. He's got a lot of special teams background for sure. He's just one to keep an eye on. But, you see a little bit here of you notice like, he's in position at least to make a play. That's good to see, you know what I mean? And he's in a great room, I'll tell you that much. But that is a stacked room. I mean, like you look at the four we talked about, Anthony Orji kind of making a little bit more of noise than Akili Hudson, right? Or some of the other guys like Monty Rice starting to do a little bit things, or we had mentioned DeMarco Jackson's name a much, but it's a stacked room, and so for Stallbird, just continue to come in here and show up. I mean, solid dude, and so
for sure, for sure. This one's going to be more of a off-season question, but if Chase Young goes off and the Saints re-sign him, how are you comfortable doing so? I would say the biggest thing is I don't know if they do. I don't know. Yeah, I think a big part of Chase Young having a good 2024 is the Saints getting a 3rd round pick in 2026.
You actually talked about this the other day. You said no matter what happens with Chase Young, it might not have been the other day, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, but you said that you can almost take it to the bank. The Saints are going to have to go draft a pass rusher.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think it's what you were saying.
100%.
So because we mentioned that the outlook on that group, and so with Peyton Turner, and then you're not knowing what you get with Isaiah Foskey, with Chase Young having his, and Cam getting a year older, that you're almost assured that you need to go get a pass rusher next year. So again, he's on a strong deal right now, and I think they'll entertain the conversation if anything. But look, the guy's young. He's got a lot of football left in him, and it depends on how things go here in New Orleans. But at the same time, they got a lot of cap considerations for next year. They got to figure out how to tackle the Alvin situation. The Ryan Ramczyk stuff was going to be on the books. You know what I mean? Right. Like, there's so many different factors and moving parts and pieces. And of course, that banks on the salary cap going up, which factors into the dispute between like the network deals and all that stuff. Hopefully it doesn't mess anything up, because this is a generous salary cap increase this year, but going into next year, you may not be able to retain some of those pieces, but Chase Young's probably one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a really interesting one. And especially as the Saints work to get a hold of their cap and all this sort of stuff, it might be a tough one. How strong was the linebacker core today? John, you just kind of highlighted the linebacker core, but I did want to come back to this because I wanted to talk about Willie Gay.
Yeah.
Willie Gay has been awesome. Pete Werner has been strong so far here.
And on the first play. Yeah.
It's always the first play for him. He's always the guy that makes the stop on the first run play of every team drill. He's always, or every day of the first team drills. He's always the guy. And so he's setting a little bit of a tone, I would say, with that. And in DeMario is DeMario. So I would say that strong show from those guys. Yeah. But the other part of it that I would highlight is speaking with Willie Gay after practice today. And I asked him what it is that he enjoys about the Saints system. And he talked a lot about how the Saints utilize their linebackers.
Just use the linebackers.
Right. He was like, I love that they use their linebackers. And so I kind of went back to that and I was like, well, when you say that they use their linebackers, what do you mean? And so he started talking about how where he was before, I respected him not calling out his own team.
Right.
Everything, but
he only got 2 Super Bowl rings there.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think that relationship's great. But him talking about going back to that, that idea of where they would, he said, no, you're making me all nostalgic now, reminiscent now. But he was talking about how on third downs, they would have one linebacker on the field. Whereas here in New Orleans, there's 2 linebackers on the field. So you have the opportunity to stay on and truly be a 3-down player and everything. And so he likes that. And then one of the things that he said when he finished it up was something along the lines of I love that they actually trust their linebackers.
Yeah.
And he also talked about how much the linebackers were kind of the tone setters of this defense, right? It's linebacker first. And look, when you've got guys like a guy like Michael Hodges coaching them, even if that wasn't the game plan, it's going to become the game plan over time. Yeah. But I thought that was really interesting to hear too. So we're seeing strong performances from the linebacker group, but we're seeing a lot of joy from those linebackers about being a part of it.
Yeah. And I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, but I definitely wrote about it, that there's times where they put Jalen Ford on the field with Willie Gay Jr. and they put him at will. So and then they moved Jalen Ford over to Sam, and DeMario's still on the field. So I thought that was pretty interesting because you look at Willie Gay Jr. the way he's kind of factoring in. Pete Warner's more that Will guy, and they're putting him at Sam, Willie Gay Jr. that is, and so they're moving him around a little bit more, putting him more in the box. We talked about him as a guy that could be somewhat new Zach Vaughn and help this pass rush out a good bit this year. And hopefully they use that to their advantage. But we also talked about Chase Young as that element too. But look, we've talked about Willie Gay Jr. a lot, that he's going to be big time hype man, him and Jamal Williams. Somebody said they had about 20 minutes of footage
just dancing.
The dude brings the energy every single day. I just think as Saints fans get to know more Willie Gay Jr. and get to see him on the field, they're going to be this is going to be a fan favorite for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yo wants to know if Kool-Aid McKinstry shines during training camp, will he start and where? I wouldn't go so far into that, but I will say
depends on Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, it's going to be more about health than it's going to be about his performance. I think that's what it's mostly going to be tied to. I will say that I'm confident in saying that that Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to see multiple starts in 2024, just because, as we've talked about several times, you're not going to have all three corners for 17 games. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's really what it's about, is him being that fourth corner that can jump into the starting lineup when one of your corners goes down.
Yeah. And to talk about Lattimore, because Dennis Allen talked about it, he kind of like gave an update without giving an update, saying that, Lattimore is going to miss a little bit of time. He's not losing any sleep over the injury, but it's concerning. And so Marshawn's going to attack the rehab process. And, that's kind of where things are at. And so, they want to have him out here. They want to have him in the building. And it's unfortunate that he's a guy that is having to do that. But, don't sleep on Paulson Adebo. Dude is solid. He's just going to be a game changer here. And I think Kool-Aid is going to learn to slide a little bit more. But we've seen that Alontae is going to be – and I got to call this out about Alontae Taylor. He's one of the first guys to hit the field. He's one of the last guys to hit the field.
He was the absolute last.
Yeah, I know people have said stuff about Alontae and just different things, but those are things that people don't see.
Right.
Like him being out there, that's a leadership mentality. Like Jamal Williams was probably the first or second person on the field today, but like Alontae is one of those first people. He's definitely one of the first to get in there in the secondary room, but he was working the jug machines after practice, just putting in the work. And I think for him going into this year, third year, if you will, it shows maturity and growth, and hopefully it leads to better play.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that a lot, and we've seen him coaching up other guys and all this other stuff. He's just assumed that role big time.
Yeah, like I said, it could be completely pointless observation, but it's just like I didn't remember seeing that in the past. And so he just taken on a little bit more of a leadership role, and I think that's a good sign for him.
Yeah. All right, we've got our last two questions here. So Yella coming back, wanting to go back to special teams for a moment. How is everybody with getting comfortable with the new rules for the kickoff? We're seeing more kick return touchdowns or penalties. I would say for my thing on that is that we haven't seen them, as you mentioned earlier, do a full 11-on-11 kickoff return drill just yet. So hard to gauge anything, but we've seen them work half the field, and the middle of the field separately with some big returns that are a part of that. But
we're also going to see a lot of penalties early.
I was going to say, but we're going to see a lot of penalties during the preseason for sure.
Yeah. And it's, I agree. Like it's just a different change. And again, the rules, we went completely into this new rule change. I don't know how many episodes ago it was, but I can't believe we've done as many episodes as we've done already, but at the same time, they have the best guy in the room, the one that kind of helped pilot this to be able to learn this rule.
Yeah.
And so look, it's not going to be without limit. Like they're not going to be perfect special teams unit, but with Riz doing it, everybody's going to know their assignment. Now, whether they go out and execute, that's going to be another thing. But, for that perspective, we've seen different return groups, punt returner. I saw like a question, I think, in punt returner too.
Yeah, that was our last one there.
It's been the same kind of crew. It's Tipton's back there, Jermaine Jackson, Rashid Shaheed. Sometimes you get a little Olave in there if you're trying to look at a safer term sometimes, but nothing that's been like crazy awe-inspiring, like totally different. Like there's been way more kick returners than there have been punt returners.
Yeah. The last time that they did kick returns that I was able to chart the returners, the pairs were Rashid Shaheed and Jermaine Jackson, Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams, James Robinson and Jordan Mims, and then Alontae Taylor and Mason Tipton. So that's who was doing the big ones.
Sorry, I'm laughing at the other question in there. You want to know what we're going to eat for dinner?
Oh, slurping ramen.
Yeah, ramen time, man. We got to enjoy Cali a little bit yesterday and go to that Angels game. And so we're going to get a little bit more into Cali today, I think. So, and, it goes by quick, man. It's a long day, but it's a fun day. And, when we get to this point, shoot.
Yeah, bro.
Every hour of the show is just like, it just flies by. And I don't, we've talked about like doing maybe more some condensed shows and stuff. I just don't know how we're going to get there.
Well, good luck to us.
A lot to say. And
good luck to us.
Ross, what you got coming up on Locked On?
First of all, I just want to bigger dreams ask if they got sausage po' boys out here. I know places that do po' boys out here and that do Cajun food. We're not going.
Okay,
cool. We're not going.
There you go.
No shot. Absolutely no shot. We're not eating that cuisine, hometown cuisine, unless we are in the hometown. That's not happening. Over at Locked On, tomorrow's episode, I'm taking a look at how Chase Young specifically benefits the New Orleans Saints pass rush, looking at 4 different elements that he brings the Saints sorely missed last year and how he might be able to contribute there. Looking at the wide receivers that need to step up, and if they're not able to find their way there, what do the Saints do about that?
Right.
And then the last thing, of course, is us taking, or of course, you don't know. The last thing is me taking a look at the running backs and how they're being utilized, because it seems that there's some focus there. But the one that's most interesting to me is Jamal Williams doing way more than I think people who considered him expendable coming into this new system that they expected him to do, because he's doing a lot more in this offense than I think people expected.
No, that's a good call. And we've talked about Jamal Williams. I'm not going to sit here and say we know what we're talking about, but we have talked about Jamal Williams, why we didn't think he was going to be a cut candidate and all that other stuff with the run style and just all the different things that they're asking him to do. So I think it's a really good call out. Look, as we wind down, obviously just want to remind everybody, can keep saying it, but if you're in the SoCal area around us and I don't know how far you're willing to go, but we're going to have our live show August 8th in Fullerton at Bourbon Street Bar and Grill. And so it'll be open invite. I think we're going to do the happy hour time frame. It's either be 4 to 7 or 5 to 8. But at the same time, we're going to get some stuff given away. Foco's donated a few things. They're going to sponsor our show. They've sponsored a lot of our shows already. And so, look, it's going to be a fun time. And so I hope to see a lot of Saints fans out there. Come kick it with us, come meet us, and come eat. And hopefully, it gets good reviews. So maybe that's as close as you can get to back home out here. That and 504 maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know 504. So, but yeah, definitely open invite for everybody. The flyer will be created soon enough, and we hope to see. Please pack this place out. I don't know how we're going to handle it, but we'll try to look like what we're trying, that we know what we're doing and stuff. But like I said, there's a thing like SoCal fans are obviously a little bit upset, and rightfully so, about no fans at training camp. But like I said, challenge that. Show up to this event and show that there's a lot of Saints fans there. So that's our challenge to you. But that's going to do it for us today. We've got episode on Tuesday and then Wednesday, and then we'll have a day off. And then Saints, more padded practices to come. You can always check out Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson every single day. Check out all the written work at Saints News Network on Sports Illustrated. And then obviously make sure you subscribe. Like, you guys have been amazing on the channel and such. And I did put some things out there just to, again, not blabber on, but, one of the best ways, we don't do subscriptions or Patreon or anything like that. But in the link, if you do shop Amazon, we got a link there below that's just a specific link for us that would help us out. And so we're not doing anything crazy right now. We're just in growth mode, but you never know where things are going to go. We don't want to put stuff like behind a paywall and all that right now or anything like that. But go check out the links that we have in the description. That's the best ways to support us. And so if you have anything else, our DMs are always open. And emails open. If you need to send a pigeon letter, like a pigeon carrier letter, we'll take that too. But that'll do it for us today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Y'all be good people. We will talk at you on Tuesday.